Redditors with terrible neighbors. What's the worst thing they've done to you? Thankfully I'm no longer neighbors with these people. But I had a neighbor who claimed to be the best handyman. A man of many professions actually including tree trimming. Cut down several big trees, 40 plus feet tall, in his yard one day, just totally out of the blue. One nearly crushed part of his house. But that didn't stop him from cutting down another, larger tree that was close to the property line. Tree falls into our yard and pulls the power lines from our house, ripping a huge hole in our siding and shattering a couple windows. Took months for him to finally come forward and admit fault and pay for the damages. Police and lawyers involved, but the dude had a grudge. Since then, would always act nasty to us, threw his dog's poop over to our yard, ran his obnoxiously loud hillbilly truck into the late hours of the night when we were trying to sleep, just doing a bunch of annoying and aggressive, but not illegal, stuff to get back at us for something he did. Mind you, my dad finally threatened to sue him for disturbing the peace and harassing his family. After months of suffering through his annoying tantrum, he finally put his house up for sale and moved. A wonderful family with a couple nice kids live there now. Had a neighbor leave a note on my then girlfriend's car saying she wasn't allowed to park in front of their house because their taxes paid for that part of the street. That same neighbor constantly called the cops on me for trivial things like one time I was shoveling my driveway and I moved my car onto the sidewalk for 5 minutes while I shoveled the spot where it was previously parked. Pretty much every discussion I had with the cops involved the cop making fun of how stupid the people were for calling to complain. He cornered my wife in a corner of the garage preventing her escape. He explained how he would protect her and showed her his gun in his waistband. He pulled out a knife and showcased his military training on how to kill a man. Finally he expressed his love for her and how he fantasizes about sneaking into our bedroom to give her oral. He told her he was really good at giving it and asked her to kiss him. Apparently none of these actions are a crime in Florida. So, I bought a puppy, white German Shepherd. All was going well and good. We were slowly leaving the dog alone at home, and we thought everything was going well until we found out our dog was constantly barking at the window. Really struggled to figure out why she was barking at every small noise, person who passed etc etc. Our neighbors put a noise complaint against us due to the dog. She was getting really bad, to the point that when we go to work my dad has to come in to look after her. Anyway, noise complaint fails because we put stuff in place for people to be with the dog, so she barks as little as possible. Turns out, the neighbor who complained to us and put the complaint in spent the first 12 months of us having the dog walking past our window and bashing on it, so the dog would go crazy. Our neighbors across the street caught him on camera doing it. A neighbor from the other side about 4 doors down saw him do it. Dogs still have separation anxiety now, and she's nearly 4. We are not sure how to help her while we are at work without her barking the entire street down. But yeah, people are evil. I had a weird old creep for a neighbor who would spend his time washing his car in front of his house. One day we had workers over doing building work on the house. After a few days they informed us that the old creep would hide behind the fence and spend the afternoon abusing them and throwing racist comments. My dad discreetly crept back to catch him doing it and gave him the fright and humiliation of his life. Next day he started mowing the lawn at night with a flashlight and testing his fire alarm in the middle of the night. The police was called to deal with him. Out of college, I lived in a house with 2 other roommates. 2 of us had cars, and 1 guy took the bus. This older woman who lived 2 houses down was constantly berating us for parking in front of her house and threatening to call the cops. Thing is, we never parked in front of her house. We had a garage where my roommate and I would park our cars. I lost count of how many times we explained to her that none of the cars in front of her house were ours. But I swear it was that old lady logic of young people are troublemakers. Finally, she came to our door one night and my roommate just lost it at her. He told her if she came by again complaining about something that wasn't our fault, that he'd call the cops himself and let them sort it out. She immediately played the "I'm just an old lady, why would you do that to me" card, but we were done. He reiterated that again. He would call the cops if she ever came to our house again. She never bothered us again the rest of the time we lived there. I understand you're frustrated about people parking in front of your house, but maybe, just maybe, watch who gets out of the cars instead of just instantly assuming it was us. My neighbors across the street are fine, but they will sometimes have people come by to pick them up. Now, if you drive up to a person's house, how might you inform them that you are there? Maybe you text them, or call them. If you don't have a cell phone, you might get out of your car and ring their doorbell. That's not what this person does, though. He drives up, stops his car, and honks his horn repeatedly. Then he waits a few seconds. Then he honks his horn a bunch of times again. This repeats until the person he's picking up comes out of my neighbor's house. This happens during the day and night as well. We've had them honking like crazy at 11 PM while my boys were trying to sleep before going to school the next day. It's just a total lack of basic human decency and consideration for others. I was like 4 on Halloween with a high fever. A couple of neighborhood kids decided to egg our house. The window was open and 2 eggs went right through and splattered sick little me in the face. My mother ran in my dad's boxers down the block, chased them into a building hallway, and gave one of them a black eye. The next day there was a knock on the door, and it was the guy and his father who made his son apologize. My mom fell outside when I was not home. When I used to live with her, our neighbors on all sides saw her on the ground, struggling to stand by holding onto the car door handle. It was hours before I got home and was able to help her up. She is very light and easy to help up. She told me how many people just parked in their driveway, stared for a minute, and walked in their homes. Not our neighbors, but my grandma's. She lives a few blocks away from my parents. When my uncle killed himself, my grandma was the one who found his body. She had obviously held him, tried to see if he would move/wake. He was cold by the time she had found him. He lived with her, shot himself directly in the heart, and muffled it with a pillow, so she hadn't heard anything. She checked on him when he didn't come down for breakfast. Anyways, the neighbor's part, she was in such a shock that she forgot how to use the telephone and went outside, knocking frantically on everyone's door from her house to my parents' blocks away. No one opened the door for her. People would peer out and just not open the door. It wouldn't have helped him, but it may have saved her some heartache. So yeah, I have some real anger towards the people in our neighborhood. For background, our house is at the top of a hill. From our backyard, there is a steep slope that goes down into the backyard of this neighbor's house. The slope is part of their property. There's a boundary fence dividing our yards between our yard and the sloped area. My grandma grows climbing plants like gourds and squash. These plants climb on the boundary fence. They're also removed yearly, so they don't get too big. My terrible neighbor occasionally climbs all the way up this steep, rocky slope to the boundary fence to pluck vegetables that grow on the fence. We've repeatedly told them to stop. Also, our dog sometimes sees them when they do that and, obviously, barks at them. They threatened to call animal control to take our dog barking from inside our own yard, even though they had to climb this steep, barren, 50-foot slope to get to the top and reach an arm through the boundary fence. By the way, they didn't pay a penny for maintaining or replacing the boundary fence. Every time we redid the fence, we paid 100%. *HOLE neighbor also once hired a gardener to remove all vegetation from that boundary fence, saying it interfered with their view. View? What view? The view through our windows and directly into our house. There's no other view from that angle. They piss me off so much every time they climb the damn slope. I hope they take a wrong step and tumble all the way back down. Literally nothing but weeds grow on the slope. Their only purpose of coming all the way up this massive, steep slope to our fence is to mess with our plants. To paint the picture, I live in an apartment complex. My next door neighbors constantly harass and threaten me and my partner every time we leave our apartment. They don't have jobs and are home 24/7 living off of disability and welfare. They are also in their 30s, so they are not elderly folks. Every time we open our door to leave, a few seconds later they will come out and try to catch us to make snarky comments like "I hope we keep you awake at night," not too sure what that means, or threats like "you better watch yourself, because one day I'm going to get you." We are confident that they sit by the door because sometimes we open our door and close it to simulate us leaving. and we've heard them come out right after. Why? Because I accidentally parked in the wrong parking spot when I was coming home late one night and couldn't see the numbers. The parking spot isn't even theirs. It is owned by the neighbors above us. They got word from those neighbors about it, and since then on they made a pact to make us miserable. The funny thing is, the neighbors who owned the spot informed me nicely about it, which I moved my car immediately. We have reported them to management and authorities, but no one cares. Big surprise. Our only solution is to move, and we are currently waiting to close on our first home. Hopefully in a week or so. They constantly use my driveway to get into their front yard, despite them having their own driveway. I have tire marks on my yard where mine meets theirs. One day I was backing out of my driveway when one of them literally speeds into my driveway and onto their yard and very narrowly missed my back end. I wasn't even out to the street yet and they were speeding. I put my car in park and marched over to ask them what the hell was their problem, but the dude Usain bolted out of his car and into his house and refused to answer the door. No matter who is home, they won't answer the door. So when I get my tax refund, I'm blocking my part of the yard with pretty little planters that will be concreted in. I've always wanted to start a flower garden. So a little story: in 2009 my grandparents were selling the house next to ours that they used to live in. It was bought by a somewhat elderly couple who were still working though. They appeared super nice. My sister and I were kids then. We'd go walk to their house, knock on the door to talk. They'd stop the truck after getting groceries to talk to us. Even if it was just me or my sister outside, they'd stop to talk to just us. Anyway, mid 2010 we found out they weren't paying for the house they were living in and were evicted. Well, they didn't take that very well. Before they left, they completely vandalized the place, ripped out all the carpet, unscrewed all the cabinets, bolted the doors shut. A cop kicked it down cause it wouldn't open any other way, chopped all the heads off my grandma's flowers, and then stole the garage door openers. Then the guy realized he had a shed full of stuff he forgot to take with. My grandpa basically told police, you don't need to arrest him, and we won't press charges on one condition: anything he forgot in his shed is now ours. So literally the next day my sister and I just went shopping for free stuff in this guy's shed. My sister took some jewelry. I took some pens THST I actually used the last month of 6th grade. I took a harmonica and a clock. And my little brother took a Green Bay Packers baseball cap.